Imagine this, a fire so intense, so different, that the fire chief literally says, this is rewriting the book.
Yeah, that was Fort McMurray, Canada, back in May 2016.
And it wasn't just any wildfire. It hit right at the heart of Canada's oil sands operations.
During what was then the hottest year in the hottest decade we'd ever recorded.
It really throws these two huge trends into sharp relief, doesn't it? Our use of hydrocarbons and the warming climate they're driving.
Absolutely, they collided right there.
So today, we want to dig into what happened, what forces were behind such an extreme fire. We'll pull out the key insights to get you up to speed.
It's a complex topic, definitely.
Yeah, and sometimes these big subjects can feel a bit overwhelming. It reminds me, actually, there's a YouTube channel called Mindful Moments.
Oh, yeah.
They use AI to analyze books, sort of prompting deeper thinking on complex stuff. Kind of like what we're trying to do here today, just, talking it through.
Right, breaking it down. So context first. Canada has, it's got a huge amount of forest, about 10% of the world's total.
Wow, 10%.
And here's the surprising part, maybe. Fire is actually essential for a lot of these forests.
Essential? How so?
Well, the circumboreal forest, that huge belt of forest around the northern part of the globe, it's like a phoenix ecosystem. It needs fire maybe every 50 to 100 years to regenerate properly.
So fire clears the way for new growth.
Exactly. And northern Alberta, where Fort McMurray is, it's not only part of that system, but it stores a massive amount of carbon. It's an epicenter for these, potentially explosive situations.
Especially when you build towns right next to it.
Precisely. You put houses where the forest meets the town, fire becomes incredibly dangerous under the right conditions.
And speaking of northern Alberta, let's talk about those oil sands. The bitumen wasn't always the focus, was it?
No, definitely not. Way back in 1929, people were pretty skeptical. Someone wrote it does not conform with the established order of things.
Because it's not like traditional oil.
Right. It's this mix, mostly sand and solids, maybe 10% bitumen, that really heavy, thick petroleum, and some water. Getting it out means strip mining, crushing rock, using steam. It's very different.
That's fascinating. And the geology behind it.
Oh, it's incredible. Millions of years ago, deep underground, there was this deep biosphere. Ancient bacteria basically ate the lighter parts of the petroleum.
Leaving the heavy stuff behind.
Yeah, the bitumen. And this deep biosphere, this world of microbes, it might be the biggest single biome on the planet. Hard to even picture.
And this whole area has seen resource rushes before, right?
Oh, absolutely. Go back a few centuries, it was the fur trade. The Hudson's Bay Company was huge. Beaver pelts were basically currency.
So the land has always been shaped by what we can take from it.
Pretty much. Now it's bitumen. High wages, sure, but also, debt, economic instability.
Yeah.
It's the modern version of that same pattern, radically changing the place.
It's weird to think that bitumen wasn't always seen as valuable.
Yeah, totally. There's a story about Sidney Els in 1914 taking 3 weeks, a really tough journey, just to transport some bitumen samples. Nobody was that excited.
But then came the petroleum fever.
Right. After Edwin Drake hit oil in Pennsylvania in 1859, suddenly everyone saw the potential. And kerosene, ironically pioneered by a Canadian, Abraham Gessner, really kicked off the industry.
And things changed fast after that.
Very fast. Standard Oil started in 1870. Same year Fort McMurray was officially established, interestingly. Petroleum quickly took over from coal because it was just so much more efficient.
Were there early signs of this power, even in that region?
Yeah. As early as 1860, you had Scientific American talking about explosion engines. And then in 1897, they found natural gas near Athabasca. Drillers hit a pocket, ignited it, and it burned for 21 years.
21 years. That's unbelievable. A preview of the energy locked underground.
A very dramatic one. And these resource booms, they can be incredibly volatile, like fire itself almost.
How do you mean?
Well, think about the Calgary Petroleum Products Company. Their stock price jumped 1,600% in one day.
Wow.
That kind of explosive growth. It's like an exothermic reaction, transforming fortunes overnight. It connects to some things we often explore in our conversations, these underlying patterns in seemingly different things.
That idea of rapid explosive change, it brings us back to the fire science, doesn't it? The concept of crossover.
Exactly. Crossover is when you get this dangerous mix, really high temperatures and very low humidity. It makes everything preheat much faster. Ignition happens easier.
And it feeds on itself.
Right. It creates this feedback loop. That's how you get those unstoppable crown fires racing through the pre-tops, throwing embers everywhere. We saw that tragically in Slave Lake back in 2011.
And those were the conditions building up before Fort McMurray.
Absolutely. The Fire Weather Index, which measures fire danger, was way, way beyond the extreme level. Off the charts.
Were there warning signs right before the main event?
There were. People like Bernie Schmidt noticed Fire 009, the one that started it, was acting weirdly acted at night. That was reminiscent of some other really bad fires, like the Chisholm Fire.
But the initial public perception wasn't one of immediate crisis.
It seems not. Some journalists felt the early briefings were almost like a non-story, which is strange because Fort McMurray knew about fire risk.
They'd had big fires nearby before.
Yeah, Mariana Lake in 95, Richardson in 2011. And the city itself is literally surrounded by mature forest. The risk wasn't exactly hidden.
So what changed on May 3rd? Why did it escalate so quickly?
A key factor was an inversion lifting. Basically, a layer of air that was trapping the smoke near the ground disappeared. The fire could suddenly breathe, get more oxygen, and it just exploded.
And eyewitnesses saw it happen.
Oh, yeah. People described an unstoppable crown fire. Traditional tactics, like water bombers, just weren't enough against the sheer number of embers being blown by the wind.
Did the type of forest around the city play a role?
Hugely. It was a mixed wood forest, but there was a lot of black spruce. Firefighters have a grim nickname for it. Gas on a stick.
Because it burns so easily.
Incredibly flammable, much more so than aspen or poplar trees, which were also there but offer more resistance. So when the wind shifted and pointed that fire full of black spruce fuel right at the town...
Uh-oh.
Yeah. One reporter, Chris Vandenbruckel, described having an oh crap moment. You could see what was coming.
And then there's the issue of what the town itself is made of.
This is critical. Modern houses are full of petroleum products. Plastics, engineered wood, held together with flammable resins.
So the houses themselves become fuel.
Essentially, yes. They can act like petroleum vapor chambers. Experiments by underwriters' laboratories showed modern furnishings go up way faster and hotter than older stuff, like, solid wood and natural fibers. These homes basically burned like refinery fires.
That's terrifying. And the fire just kept coming.
Relentlessly. It was described as a wave of flame hitting neighborhoods like Beacon Hill and Abasand. People saw it flowing down Highway 63 like lava.
Like lava.
That was the description. It got so bad, firefighters sometimes had to pull back just to save their trucks, never mind the houses. The scale was just overwhelming. Communications were breaking down.
It really shifts the perspective, doesn't it? From fighting a forest fire to something else.
Right. There is this insight from Ray Rasker. We don't have a forest fire problem, we have a home ignition problem. By May 3rd, the houses weren't just in the fire's path, they were the fuel, just like the trees.
Were some areas more vulnerable than others?
Geographically, yes. Places like Wood Buffalo and Dickensfield had these ravines around them connecting to a big park, Birchwood trails. Those ravines acted like fuses, leading the fire right in.
And the potential for the denser neighborhoods.
Lakewood, Timberley, where most people lived.
Yeah, the potential was catastrophic.
There must have been some incredibly close calls, some dramatic moments.
Absolutely harrowing stories. A water bomber almost hit firefighters on the ground just shows how chaotic and close the fight was.
Wow. Another person, Lucas Welsh, described seeing this wall of fire actually leaning towards the oxygen like it was alive, seeking fuel.
Almost sentient.
It felt that way to people in it. And Wayne McGrath, he was trying to save things from his house, couldn't believe it was really happening, and then the fire doubled back against the wind to get his place. Just rapacious.
And the emergency systems.
Yeah.
Coping.
They were completely overwhelmed. The evacuation itself, necessary as it was, jammed up the phone lines, including 911. First responders were pushed to the absolute limit. Many thought they were saying a final goodbye to their families as they headed into that firestorm.
Unimaginable pressure.
Recognizing this wasn't a normal situation, Fire Chief Darby Allen reached out for specialized help. He called Dale Benfeld.
Why him specifically?
Benfeld had this unique background, law enforcement and military crisis management. He understood large-scale, complex emergencies.
It speaks to something psychologists call the Lucretius problem, doesn't it?
Exactly. It's our difficulty as humans in really grasping, really imagining events that are way outside our normal experience. Even with data, even with warnings, the sheer scale of this fire was just hard to truly prepare for mentally.
So the goals had to shift.
Radically.
Yeah.
By the afternoon of May 3rd, the Emergency Operations Center wasn't focused on stopping the fire anymore. The primary goal became minimizing fatalities, getting people out.
Because containment was impossible.
Essentially, yes.
Yeah.
And Highway 63, the main road out.
Uh-uh.
It just wasn't designed for 80,000 people trying to leave all at once.
What did the city look like afterwards once people were out?
Eerie. From the air, it looked like Pripyat near Chernobyl, abandoned. Cars in driveways, barbecues on decks. Lives just frozen mid-moment. Many evacuees had no idea how bad the destruction actually was yet.
And the people who evacuated, the first responders, the emotional impact must have been huge.
Immense. People were crowded into work camps north of the city dealing with the trauma. First responders saw devastation firsthand. Paul Ayers returned to find just nothing left of his neighborhood. Total loss.
But the evacuation itself, despite the chaos,
was, in many ways, a miracle. Chief Allen announced on May 4th that all 88,000 people known to be in the city had gotten out. And crucially, no immediate fatalities during the evacuation itself. Considering the circumstances, that's astounding.
an incredible achievement. But the fire wasn't done.
Not even close. The forecast for May 4th was terrible. Extreme heat again, winds shifting, possibility of lightning. Chief Allen started describing the fire as a moving animal.
An animal?
Yeah, saying it would look for fuel, take unburnt areas. It wasn't just a force of nature anymore. It felt like an independent entity with ambitions of its own.
How did this fire compare to, say, historical city fires?
Its sustained intensity was remarkable. Great fires like Chicago or Baltimore, devastating as they were, burned out relatively quickly. Fort McMurray burned intensely day and night for days. Its longevity was more like the Great Fire of London in 1666 or the Great Fire of Mereki in Edo, Japan. It's potentially unique in modern urban fire history.
And the science behind why it burned so intensely in the city itself.
Vito Bobraskas, a fire behavior expert, had a chilling analysis. He argued that the houses themselves were the incendiaries.
Right.
Meaning, with all the flammable stuff inside them, they didn't always need embers landing directly on them. Once one house went up, the heat and flames were enough to ignite the next one, creating this chain reaction. A synergy between burning houses and burning trees. He even compared it, in effect, to the fire dynamics seen in World War II firebombing raids.
That's sobering. So how did they even try to fight that?
They had to get radical. They brought in huge ARFF trucks, the kind airports use for plane crashes from the oil companies, and they did something almost unheard of, using bulldozers and excavators to cut fire breaks through neighborhoods.
Knocking down houses.
Yes, knocking down perfectly intact houses just to remove the fuel before the fire got there. It was a desperate measure against flames that were just too high, too intense for normal methods.
What must that have looked like on the ground?
Pure chaos. Firefighters battling spot fires from embers in people's backyards, pumper trucks flooding streets with water, but still watching entire blocks just vanish into flames.
It's no wonder Chief Allen called it the Beast.
That name just stuck. It captured the feeling perfectly. Its sheer size, its unpredictable movement, its seeming cruelty, the terror it caused.
Mm-hmm.
It felt like fighting a living thing.
And the scale? By the next day.
By sunrise on May 5th, the fire had burned through something like 350 square miles. That's more than 10 times the size of Manhattan. Just shows its incredible power to consume resources.
But even after all that destruction, life finds a way.
It does. It's quite poignant. People later observed new green shoots pushing up through the completely blackened earth. Near one destroyed home, the Hartmans, amaryllis bulbs they'd planted pushed up flowers right through the ash.
A reminder of resilience.
Exactly. It echoes that phrase used in the epilogue of some accounts. How we get there is where we go. Even after catastrophe, the drive towards life continues.
So wrapping this up, what are the big takeaways for you?
Well, first, just the unprecedented nature of this fire. It wasn't just bad luck. It was a collision of extreme weather, fueled by climate change, and our own vulnerabilities, how we build, where we build, and our deep entanglement with petroleum.
Both as fuel for the economy and fuel for the fire itself in the building materials.
Precisely. And second, the sheer challenge of responding to something that moves and changes that fast, that intensely. Our usual playbooks just didn't apply.
It really is a powerful, if terrifying, example of how human actions, resource use, and the environment are all tangled together, especially as the climate shifts.
Yeah, and hopefully this conversation, maybe like those analyses on mindful moments we mentioned, helps give you a clearer picture of these really big, important forces at play.
Absolutely. So we hope you'll subscribe to keep exploring these kinds of topics with us. If you found this useful, please share it with others.
And if you're able to support the work we do, there's usually a link in the show notes.
But most importantly, really think about what we've discussed. Think critically about the connections, the implications.
And maybe leave with this thought. Fort McMurray taught us some hard lessons. Given those lessons, what fundamental changes do we really need to make in how we approach energy, how we live with our environment, to avoid repeating these kinds of catastrophes in a world that's only getting hotter?